In this video, I'm going to break down what the androgen receptor actually is, what its job is in the human body, and what can happen when there are too many unbound androgens floating around. We'll zoom in from basic biology to real-world consequences, both for performance and for long-term health. So first, what is an androgen receptor? The androgen receptor is a protein inside cells that acts like a hormone-sensitive switch. It's part of the nuclear receptor family, which means it sits in the cytoplasm or nucleus, and when the right hormone binds to it, the receptor hormone complex moves into the nucleus and changes which genes are turned on or off. The main natural androgens that bind to this receptor are testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, or DHT. Synthetic anabolic androgenic steroids also bind to this receptor, sometimes more strongly or more persistently than natural hormones. You find androgen receptors in classic androgen-responsive tissues like skeletal muscle, bone, the prostate, hair follicles, and many parts of the brain. But they're also present in other cell types as well. So when people talk about androgenic signaling, what they're really talking about is the net effects of androgen binding to these receptors across different tissues and changing active gene expression. What is the receptor's purpose? The androgen receptor is basically the body's way of translating androgen hormone levels into specific biological outcomes. In puberty and development, androgen receptor activation drives things like increased muscle mass, bone growth, and mineralization, deepening of the voice, development of male pattern body and facial hair, and maturation of reproductive organs. In adults, androgen receptor signaling helps maintain muscle mass and strength, supports bone density, contributes to libido and aspects of sexual function, and plays a role in mood, energy, and cognitive function. In skeletal muscle, for example, when testosterone or another androgen binds to the receptor hormone complex goes into the nucleus and upregulates genes involved in protein synthesis and downregulates some pathways involved in protein breakdown. Over time, with adequate nutrition and training stimulus, that helps support muscle hypertrophy and strength. The key point is the receptor is a regulator. It doesn't just make you grow, it reads the hormonal environment and helps tissues adjust their structure and function accordingly. So bound versus unbound androgens. In the bloodstream, most testosterone is bound to carrier proteins like sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG, and albumin. Only a small fraction is free or loosely bound. That free fraction, plus the albumin-bound portion, is considered bioavailable because it can actually diffuse into tissues and interact with receptors. When people say unbound androgens, they're usually talking about higher levels of free or bioavailable hormone, either because total androgen levels are very high because binding proteins are relatively low, or because synthetic compounds are present in large amounts and overwhelm the normal binding and clearance. At the tissue level, that translates to more hormone molecules available to bind to androgen receptors in multiple organs at once. If you push androgen exposure far above what the system is designed for, whether that's very high endogenous production or more commonly supraphysiologic dosing of anabolic steroids, you don't just get more gains. You get systemic overload of androgen receptor signaling and downstream effects. In some tissues, that'll look like exaggerated versions of the receptor's normal roles. More sebaceous activity in acne, more stimulation of hair follicles in androgen-sensitive patterns, enlargement of the prostate, and erythropoiesis. In the brain, altered androgen signaling can influence mood, impulsivity, and reward processing. The body tries to defend homeostasis. The hypothalamus and pituitary sense high androgen levels and suppress gonadotropin release, which drives endogenous production of testosterone downward. Long term, this can lead to testicular atrophy, reduced sperm production, and infertility. There are also less obvious downstream risks. High androgen loads over time can contribute to adverse lipid changes, blood pressure elevation, structural and functional changes in the heart, and potential effects on the liver and other organs. None of that comes from androgens floating around doing nothing. It comes from receptors in many tissues being activated beyond physiological levels for long periods. So the real issue with too many unbound androgens isn't just that they're unbound, it's that they're massively amplifying receptor signaling in places that don't necessarily benefit from it, and at doses the system has no evolutionary experience handling. So to recap, the androgen receptor is a nuclear hormone receptor that converts androgen levels into specific gene expression changes across muscle, bone, reproductive tissues, skin, and the brain. Its purpose is to coordinate development and maintenance of androgen-sensitive traits and functions. When available androgens are pushed to very high, unphysiological levels, the receptor system is driven far beyond its normal operating range. That's why you see not only certain desirable effects, like more muscle, but also a long list of side effects and long-term risks that go well beyond the gym mirror or how you simply feel.